This is the lecture for Arvind Sharma's chapter Grounds for Belief in God. Just one topic, this lecture. On the top of page 4, well, really the bottom of page 3, we have the first way argues from the fact of motion to a prime mover, the second from causation to a first cause, the third from contingent beings to a necessary being, the fourth from degrees of value, blah, blah, blah. So this thing, the third from contingent beings to a necessary being. So to understand this, first we want to understand contingency and necessity. And this actually came up in the previous lecture about Craig, where I was talking about modality. And I said modality is about possibility and necessity and actuality. And another word for possibility is contingency. So something is possibly red. That means it could have been red and it could have not been red. There were options there. And so its redness is kind of contingent on something else. So, it might not have been red, but it's red, or it might have been red, but it's not red, or whatever. It's contingent on some fact. And that's contrasted with necessity. If something is necessarily red, then it wasn't possible for it to be anything else. There's no possibilities there. It's just necessarily red. And there's no contingency there either. So contingency, possibility, same sort of thing. Necessity rules out contingency, rules out possibility. And so what are contingent beings and necessary beings? So contingent beings are beings that could have existed and could have not existed. So quite possibly you and I are contingent beings. We exist. So of course it's possible for us to exist. It's got to be possible for me to exist if I exist. But maybe it's possible for me not to exist. Maybe if something had turned out differently, I wouldn't have existed. Maybe if my parents had never met, I never would have existed. Or, maybe there's lots of options here. So plausibly, I am a contingent being. Maybe, maybe not. But I don't know, that seems pretty reasonable. A necessary being, meanwhile, is something that sort of must exist. There's no options. It could not have failed to exist. And some people argue that God is a necessary being. God could not have not existed. There's no possibility there with respect to God. God is something that must exist if God exists. So that's contingency and necessity, and specifically with respect to kinds of beings.